Hi, Peter Marshall here, and you are listening to TV Confidential.
Hey, one of these four players will win a fabulous vacation to Jamaica as we play Jumble, the interactive game.
Ed Robertson with a reminder that we will bring you an encore presentation of our conversation with Wink Martindale from December 2018 later on in this hour. We hope you stay tuned for that. In the meantime, Randy West is with us via Zoom right now as we continue our program-length tribute to Wink Martindale. Randy West, longtime announcer for television, worked with Wink Martindale on at least 5 television series for the Family Channel, sharing a few memories of his friend and colleague Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale passed away Tuesday, April 15th at the age of 91. You mentioned Wink. Sometimes you had occasion to socialize with Wink. Now, one thing you and I have in common is we're both members of what it used to be called Pacific Pioneer Broadcasters. It's now known as Hollywood Media Professionals. About 3 or 4 times a year, they would have luncheons. You used to be at the Sportsman's Lodge. It's now at a place
Hilton in Woodland Hills.
In Woodland Hills, and Wink more often. I mean, if he was in town and he was up to it, more often than not, Wink would be in the audience supporting his fellow broadcasters, even if the program had nothing to do with him. But on one occasion, you and I were in the audience about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was a Saturday morning visit with Wink. We're looking back at his career, and at one point, he performed one of his spoken word recordings. I had not heard. I mean, most people think of deck of cards, but right. And he had done 1 or 2 on Elvis. But at the time of this particular Saturday morning event with the Hollywood Media Professionals, he had just released a new spoken word recording called "I Stand for Everyone," which was about the American flag, and he performed it that morning. And I think it had to do with what it means to be an American.
That's it. Yes.
And you talk about what a professional. I mean, this is probably not the first time he ever performed that recording in front of an audience, but he made it seem like it was the very first time he performed it, and it was. I mean, I was not the only one who was moved that day.
Right. No, he gave it a very sincere, very dramatic reading. He was an orator. He really knew how to use his voice and presentation with drama and heart. He was very good. And don't think for a moment when you saw Wink doing something like that he didn't prepare.
Yeah.
He was a stickler as a professional for approaching the business always professionally. I mean, his agent and my agent for a period of time, Fred Wasbrock, used to say, the man is so camera ready at all times that he'll spend 20 minutes in makeup just to pick up the newspaper from the morning, at the porch at the front of the house. He'll just have his hair perfect before he opens the door, which of course is a joke, but he was always fully prepared physically, emotionally, and with his material. He did some television appearances, I want to say maybe 3-4 years ago. I'm trying to remember. I'm going to blow his name, but it was a television personality. And he called me, he said, give me some off the cuff comments about this or that. And, the fact that he would prepare ad libs is not to his detriment. It just shows how professionally he approached the work. He wanted to have some stuff in his pocket that he could pull out for a moment that would bring a laugh or change the subject or segue into a different conversation. Fully prepared at all times, very dramatic. And, one of the first things that he and I, way back, he said, you know your radio, don't you? Because we had met at a radio studio. And I said, yeah. He says, I know radio from way before you were born. I said, go ahead, try me. He says, you ever hear of a dramatic show called Mr. District Attorney? And of course, that's like a 1930s, 40s radio drama show. And he, of course, figured he'd pull the ace out of his deck, and there's no way I would ever know that. And I went, Mr. District Attorney, champion of the people, guardian of our fundamental rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then he picked up with the next line, and it should be my duty as Mr. District Attorney not only to champion the rights of people, but to enforce with equal vigor. And he just, this great old soliloquy from radio early days, we bonded. He couldn't believe I knew it, and I couldn't believe that he could remember it from all those years earlier. Just an easy guy to get along with on air and off. What you saw is what you got. Sandy, his wife, was the most attentive, loving, supportive person I'd ever met. She was perfect as a partner in life, as a lover, but also as a partner in his career. You know, they both had professional careers going way back. Sandy had dated Elvis Presley. Sandy's father was in show business. He used to run nightclubs and had booked Elvis. And Elvis had come into Sandy's father's office, saw a picture of the teenage Sandy on the desk. Who's that? And the next thing you know, they have established a relationship and a friendship and a date that transpired. And she ended up dancing on a couple of Elvis's movies. So she knew Elvis as socially and professionally. So she had a career as well. And of course, Wink goes back with Elvis to 1956 when Elvis's first record, That's All Right Mama, came out of Sun Records and was first played at WHBQ in Memphis, and Wink was there that night. So here's an interesting point. You got two performers who both are one degree of separation from Elvis. Two of them come together, and it was an ideal marriage, 49 years, and would still be going forever because they just worked so well together, personally, professionally, as partners in every aspect of their life. And my heart goes out to Sandy. I haven't had it in my heart to call her yet. I mean, I know she's inundated with phone calls. They had friends around the world, and what do you say? My God, you know, and we will see each other shortly. But a tremendous loss to Sandy, and for the rest of us, anyone who worked with him, I know left with a good taste in their mouth, and look back at the experience with joy and pride, because he brought out the best in everyone that appeared with him.
Yeah, he spent an hour with me and my listeners on our program a few years back. And speaking of Elvis, I ghost edited a memoir of Anita Wood, who was Elvis's steady before Priscilla. So it was an interesting look at the early years of Elvis, and Elvis's appearances on the station in Tennessee that Wink was at the time is part of the narrative of the first half of the book. And I reached out to Wink and asked him if he would give us a blurb for the back jacket of the book. And he said, sure. He made one request because, and you'll appreciate this, he was a stickler for accuracy.
Yeah.
And there was, and it's very tricky because memoir is not a historical record. Memoir is what you remember of that particular time. And there is one detail where the author's memory was a little different than Wink's memory. And we had to massage that section, but we did. The author was very happy to do that, and Wink was very happy to do that. And he wrote a really, really wonderful blurb for us. So I can honestly say I worked with them a couple of times, but nowhere near as often and as you did, Randy.
Well, being in the studio with him as the announcer on his shows, you're also responsible for doing the audience warm up, which is you come out, hey, everybody, good to see you. You ever have a good time today? Well, okay. You know, it's just a kind of a rah-rah session, a cheerleader kind of thing to get people's energy up and excited and all that. And I have I've done that on many, 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 many shows. And when I did the first performance of it, I said to Wink, after, we finished the first episode, I said, if there's anything I'm doing in the warm-up that you'd like me to do more of or less of, or in a way you want to be introduced to, he said, Randy, he says, you're incredible. He says, the hardest job I ever had, this is Wink speaking, was to do audience warm-up for an early television show. And the name of the host escapes me now, but it was one of those names not Art Linkletter, but one of those early television names. And I was hired to do warm up. And he said, and I realized in one moment that I was way over my head. It calls for a lot of ad lib ability and adaptation to what's going on and the people and the things that they say in an audience. It's very loosey goosey. And he said to me, I have the highest regard for what you do, because this is the one thing in the entertainment industry that I feel that I failed at. Now, I can't imagine him having failed at it, but he felt that he couldn't live up to expectation, and he felt he didn't do it justice. And his compliment on that first day about audience warm-up and subsequently was always a feather in my cap in his mind. He felt he had hired the right guy for it. And occasionally, when you're talking to an audience preparatory to a show, sometimes you're talking about what they're talking about, asking questions, interview. And somebody came up with a question one day, do you know who is this and that? And I said, boy, you want to play trivia? I'll try to answer yours if you'll answer mine. So we ended up in a trivia kind of contest with the audience members, which is great because it's just loosening up. It's all fine. There's no script to doing warm up. So at the end of that day, he said, hey, you doing trivia? I said, well, just when it comes up. He says, it was funny stuff. He says, did you have any prize to give to the people? I said, no, we were just playing. He says, I'll make sure you have something to give away. And the next day and every tape day subsequent to that, for 5 different series, when I came in and did audience warm-up, there was a stack of brand new, fresh, crisp dollar bills that somebody had gone to the bank to get and handed to me, so that if we went to trivia or somebody said something cute or whatever, I could just peel off a dollar bill. Now, on the budget of a television show, it's nothing at all, but it was so tremendously thoughtful for Wink to, hey, if you're going to do that, let me enhance what you're doing. Let me get some dollar bills for you. And that was great. I mean, it just shows how much he respected, admired, and wanted to bring out the best in you.
Randy West worked with Wink Martindale on several occasions, including Trivial Pursuit. Wink Martindale passed away April 15th at the age of 91.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
One more item. If you're starting a company, particularly one that is in an emerging market, you know that averting any sort of legal dispute is crucial to your business plan. Our friends at Tectonic Law offer an array of services that can help you avoid and preempt future litigation while also developing and protecting your intellectual property and intangible assets. Tectonic Law serves the needs of a host of emerging industries throughout California and beyond, including industrial designers, beverage makers, artists, farmers, retail stores, health practitioners, wellness experts, cosmetics manufacturers, nonprofit organizations, innovators in sustainable practices, and libraries. Go to tectoniclaw.com to learn more about how Tectonic Law can help your business thrive. tectoniclaw.com. Rock solid representation for groundbreaking industries.
Hi, this is Melissa Manchester, and you lucky people, are listening to TV Confidential.
Welcome back to Boggle, everybody. And by the way,
One more question. You've talked about what a professional he was. He worked hard at everything, even though there are probably more things about hosting a show or producing a show that he's probably forgotten more things about that than most of us will remember. But he always worked hard, and that stems from when he was a kid, because if I remember correctly, when he decided he wanted to be a radio announcer, he taught himself how to be an announcer.
Yeah, he would read
dedication, yeah.
Yeah, read magazine ads into something in his hand. Some people use a big baking spoon, other people use a hairbrush or whatever. And he did that as well, reading ads from Life magazine to try to learn how to read well. If you're announcing, which he did for all those years as a radio performer, you need to be able to read ahead of what your mouth is doing, so you know the context of the sentence. And it's kind of tricky because most people just are reading the word they're looking at that moment. So there's a trick to the trade, And he practiced from an early age. And that's why his delivery, when he was reading cue cards, for example, didn't always seem like he was reading cue cards because he's way ahead. And it's just one of many skills that, as you say, he practiced every day that most people have forgotten. I'll give you a very quick anecdote, which I think is just so typical of Wink. It's so wonderful. We were doing several shows out of studios in Glendale, California. And at the top of the show, I would introduce, and here's the star of Trivial Pursuit, the man who knows what kemosabe really means, Wink Martindale. And it was a different setup line every day. And he would come out and say, "Hi, everybody. I'm Wink." And on our first rehearsal, the first day, the cue card lady, Mary Steck, who's been handling cue cards for decades, even at that point, and had shoulder problems, basically, from holding all these cards for decades and decades, she would abbreviate so she wouldn't have as many cards to hold and that much weight on her arms. So she said, on the first card that she wrote, she said, "Hi, I'm WM. Welcome to TP." Now, the show you're doing is Trivial Pursuit, or you wouldn't have gotten out of bed. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know, WM is Wink Martindale, and that's you. So she felt pretty secure. And he came out first day of rehearsal, and he said, "What's this WM?" She says, "That's you, honey." He said, "Write it out, please." So I was like, just, as a backup for his own potential error, he wanted the preparation. So I said to Mary, if you're going to write out his name, a long name, Martindale, you're going to need another card, aren't you? You're going to fall into one more card in this stack. She said, "Yeah, apparently." So I said, "Well, why don't you put down, 'Thank you, Randy West.' And let's see if he reads it or not." So, it's a rehearsal. It's not for the money that day. It's the very first day. So she writes down, "Thank you, Randy West. Hi, I'm Wink Martindale. Welcome to Trivial Pursuit." And he reads it. And now we're taping, and he reads it. And through 147 or whatever it was episodes, "Thank you, Randy West," because it was put in front of him. It's so funny. So I said to him, I had Mary add that to the card. I'm responsible for that. And I just did it kind of as a lark, and she went along with it as a joke, whatever. You don't have to say it, I don't feel slighted in the least because, my name is part and parcel of the show and other portions of the program. He says, "No, I like it. And I know you like it. Let's keep it in."
You mentioned Television City in Hollywood. If I remember correctly, you are currently working on a book about some of the many shows that were produced in Television City at Television
It's
City.
an amazing story that I will summarize as quickly as I can. Television City was sold about 6 years ago. The new owners want to change a lot of what's on the property, but there's one little acre of the 25 acres that's a National Historic Landmark, cultural landmark, and they were going to make some adaptations to it. And I went down there having read that, and I said, "You can't do that. You got 25 acres, fool around with the other 24. There's so much history here. Jack Benny, Danny Kaye, George Burns, Carol Burnett, the Smothers Brothers, on and on and on, all in the family, the Jeffersons, Maude." I went on, Sandy and Cher, if I didn't say that already. You can't fool with these studios. There are hundreds and hundreds of artists and artisans who worked on these shows, and millions of Americans who honor those programs. Don't fool with these 4 studios. I don't know what I need to do to convince you. Me just talking into the wind, probably not. But suppose a whole bunch of retirees from CBS who worked those shows came down here one day and tried to bend your ear about it. What if the press showed up? No, I wouldn't really do that, but it's just a thought. I wanted to put a little juice behind what I was suggesting about honoring the cultural landmark. Mm-hmm. And they had some other changes to make to accommodate the neighborhood reasons for height of the buildings and all this kind of stuff today. So they had to go back and redo plans. I got a phone call out of the blue. "Randy, would you come down and look at our new plans for Television City?" I said, "Do you have new plans?" He said, "Yeah, we changed things and I'd like you to take a look at it because I know you're involved and passionate about it." Well, of all the things they did, they left those 4 studios alone. The rooftop thing they were going to add, the extension on here, the breakthrough of that wall, and all that was removed. And I said, "Oh my God, that's 95% of all I could have hoped for." He said, "What's the other 5%?" And I told him about another interior thing that they might have changed. He shook my hand. He says, "Now you got 100%. Will you do something for us?" And I'm like, what? He says, come down to City Hall and testify in support of what we're trying to do. So I went down there half a dozen times, the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Land Use Commission, the traffic thing, and the whole city council. They finally got all their approval. They threw a party for everybody who was involved with that. And they said to me, well, you know more about this place than we do. We're real estate people, but you know the other side of it, the creative portions and the programs and the stars. Would you give tours of the property for our VIPs? Because you could enhance so much more than we. So I give tours for them occasionally. And a friend of mine said, wait a minute, you're behind the scenes, have the run of the house at Television City. And why don't you write a book about it? And I'm like, I went down to them and I said, do you cooperate with me? He said, absolutely, because the history here certainly should be told. It's never been told before. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, the story ends with me now 45,000 words into a story that isn't just recollections. They've given me the blueprints from 1950, 1960, 1970, 1980, all 75 years. Now I can see exactly the background, the blueprints, the architects' renderings, and all the changes that happened internally in all these famous studios. So it's an unprecedented backstory of research materials that is overwhelming. Run of the house, run of the place, the chance to look, touch, smell, feel, see, and all of this paperwork that substantiates it all is coming together as the most amazing thing I've ever been involved with. It's a landmark project, I think, because everyone knows the phrase from Television City in Hollywood. And that would be the title of the book. And I'm so excited and enthused about it. My passion's over the top over this project. So thank you for mentioning it. I'm over the moon about this.
I believe you have a publisher for it. Is it something that might come out either later this year or sometime in 2026?
I'm going to look to 2026 on it. Yeah, because it's a massive project, and I'm assembling photos now. Clearing photos from copyright is a big issue. But I want this at best to be a coffee table book, which means glossy pages, large format, and lots of photos. So if I can get the photos that I need cleared, which is a process, it'll be a real keepsake, an amazing piece of work. But even if I can't get all those photos cleared, it's a story of a building that was forethought into the future. Let me just give you one sentence on that. When CBS came up with a plan to build Television City, less than 1% of American households had a television. 1948, less than 1% of American households had a television. And here's CBS willing to spend $35 million at the time, which is now $500 million, on something that is clearly for the future, because nobody had a television in 1948. They finished the place in 1952. At that point, 34% of Americans had a television set, and that number was growing by the day. So it was so forward thinking. And the facility itself is the first time that a set design, set construction, drapery, wardrobe, makeup, casting, conference room. It's the first time all that was under one roof. And that's why it's called Television City. There's no construction of sets somewhere else that have to be trucked in. Meetings and rehearsals held at another facility. Everything was under one roof. So it was amazing to put on the line the equivalent of $500 million when no one had television. It's a backstory that's phenomenal. And with their architect planning, what would television look like when it becomes a mass production kind of thing? When Ford built the mass produced, assembly line, what would it look like if you did 25 shows in a day? Because then television was nothing. It was on for a couple of hours a day. As you know, it was nothing. If we had to do a half a dozen or 24 shows a day, well, how would that work? So they built what was the equivalent at the time of an efficiency model for constructing sets, taking shows through the whole process of rehearsal and casting and drapery and wardrobe, and then down to the stage. So the building is built sort of in a way that complements that kind of efficiency, sort of like an assembly line. So the concept behind building it and then how to look to the future of production makes this a very, very unique building that really earns its cultural landmark status.
Well, From Television City in Hollywood sounds like a great book. I'm looking forward to reading it. I know my listeners are going to look forward to reading it. So keep us posted on the progress. It is always a joy to talk to you, Randy, even on sad occasions such as these. Thank you so much for spending part of your day talking about your friend Wink Martindale.
It's always a joy talking with you, Ed. Thank you so much for thinking of me and inviting me on the program.
We'll replay our conversation with Wink Martindale from December 2018. We come back here on TV Confidential.